I don't get to speak too often, so I'm going to try to use the podium. As Bob said, Anchor Rising, well, we've been around for about 6 years. It started as an email conversation between me and Andrew Morse when we foresaw what's happening now. It wasn't that hard to see. And we grew to now we have 5 regular contributors. I used to joke that that meant we had every Rhode Island conservative. Of course, the very first Tea Party kind of put that joke and made it obsolete because it clearly wasn't true. And as Bob mentioned, we're currently trying to find funds for a full-time position with the blog so we can do things like film all the committees and just be out there gathering information. As part of that fundraising effort, I had a conversation last week with somebody whose name you would all know, didn't want to go on the record. And he is thoroughly convinced that Rhode Island is now a lost cause. Whether it's the battle of egos among us on the right side of the issues, as Bill Faulkner suggested in a Providence Journal op-ed recently, or that infamous road apathy, as Dan York calls it, or just the simple fact that the state of Rhode Island has been busily chasing away exactly the people it needs to turn around. The person with whom I spoke could neither personally support nor recommend that others support or finance a movement that could not win, that is, our movement. And frankly, you can't blame people who come to that conclusion. There are plenty of battles to fight in life. There's causes, charities, and enterprises that can make the world a better place with just a little application of free time, some money. And if the fight cannot be won in Rhode Island, then the wiser course is to devote effort elsewhere. But the key word is if. It's only a depressing thought if you buy into the premise. And I don't. I was actually motivated by that conversation because it seems just so clear to me that the diagnosis is incorrect. For one thing, we already know what the prescription is. We need a stronger voice for limiting government and for returning to self-determination and self-responsibility. It's the cause of Rhode Island's unique illness that isn't all that clear. It's a lack of awareness from where I sit. I mean, we know why those who benefit from the current circumstances would fight to maintain it. They're feasting at the public trap. Ultimately, I don't think they're the problem. They're like a chronic disease. Our species is genetically prone to them. They'll always exist, people who try to take money from others, and they can be managed. The problem lies with people being distracted by life, who don't even understand why they should be paying attention and that paying attention matters. The challenge is for us to explain it. It falls to people who see that there's a problem. We're not doing the sort of things that we have to do. We need to build a political culture. It's not here for us to tap into. From the bottom up, reaching every home in Rhode Island, giving every potential voter, potential candidate reason to believe that things can actually change. And if you look at the people who won, especially over in Portsmouth, Riley and Odiano, they've run multiple times. A lot of the people on our side who ran were fresh. You almost can't fault voters for being wary of voting for somebody they've never heard of before. So if they keep in it and we keep promoting them and they keep making cases, they can succeed going forward. And let me tell you that it really doesn't take that much to stop state and local issues from spinning out of control as the opposition wants it to. Just a little bit of work, a little bit of information does the trick. Even as part-time bloggers, I would argue that Anchor Rising has had a lot of success opposing groups that, as Bob said, do so, advocate politics professionally, often using our money. As an example, back before 2008, there was a lot of debate about who was leaving Rhode Island and still is leaving Rhode Island. And in general, right-leaning reformers claim that the wealthy, it was the rich, they were leaving, taking tax dollars elsewhere. The left actually liked that argument because they could make it into a class warfare issue. And it also had the advantage to them that it wasn't accurate. So on Anchor Rising, we invested in a small amount of money in some IRS statistics of migration, which tells you where taxpayers are moving from, where they're moving to. And we combined that with some numbers from census data, and we found that it wasn't actually the rich people who were leaving, they were actually increasing, probably because of the now unfortunately defunct flat tax and capital gains tax reductions. But the people who were leaving were the highly motivated, economically productive, working and middle-class folks, the strivers, who've been tired of struggling. One of my favorite arguments when people say we need to invest in education is that in Rhode Island, when we invest in education, we invest in workforces for somewhere else because we don't have anywhere for them to work here. Another group leaving is the middle-aged professionals I'm getting who they have to get ahead now because they want to retire someday. It's sort of like the public sector's unions will do almost before they're middle-aged. But since 2008, that conversation has changed. In part, Ed Acorn used to write about that a lot in a Providence Journal, and he actually emailed me after we published these results and asked me to explain it to him, who's leaving and why. And that's just a little bit of research. We were able to present that information and change the conversation. Another, maybe more visceral example. About 2 years ago, the National Education Association of Rhode Island, and you should feel free to boo whenever that comes up, they staged a raucous, intimidating school committee meeting in East Providence. I don't know if any of you were there. They bust in protesters from I was walking in and I heard them saying, "Oh, I love the Rhode Island accent." Oh, this is a local issue here. Where are you coming from? And they were shouting and jumping around. John Lidecker, who some of you might have seen in the news, because he was arrested for questionable campaign activities, let's say, I guess, perhaps I should say alleged. He tried to start a fist fight with school committee chairman Anthony Kucheri after the meeting.
Really? Who would have thought?
So immediately after the meeting, you can predict this, the unions went out into the media and tried to downplay what they had done, what the bad behavior was. And it was a great moment. I'm a carpenter. I was working on a finished kitchen out in Newport, and I was listening to the Dan York show, and Jim Hummel was filling in, and he had Valerie Lawson, who was the president of the union in East Providence, and John Lidecker on. And Valerie Lawson was saying, "Oh, the teachers weren't shouting down residents; they were cheering for the next person in line." And Hummel said, "Well, let me play something for you." And he clicked on a link on Anchor Rising, and it was that very moment that she had been describing of some resident of East Providence trying to make a point, and the teacher saying, "Boo, sit down." And Valerie Lawson was kind of stuck, and John Lidecker, being a lawyer, had to jump in and change the topic, which I guess is what lawyers do. The point is that we were there, Anchor Rising, we were blogging, and we were giving everybody an eye into an aspect of negotiations that they didn't even know needed to be kept an eye on. And I can't speak for other towns, but I'll tell you that in my hometown of Tiverton, the school committee meetings were a lot calmer after that. Might have been me with my video camera, possibly. But what that did was it gave the school committee room. It gave them room to think, room to breathe, and it gave residents a feeling of security that they could speak without feeling like they were targets. But as a positive example, we've also helped organizations on our side. During the summer healthcare town halls, for example, when our Democrat delegation in Congress made a show of listening to voters, and back when the Tea Party was gaining momentum, Anchor Rising was able to secure media passes, and we put every minute of every one of those online, which helped people like you to find the Tea Party and figure out that this needed to be addressed. Shortly after that, the Rhode Island Voter Coalition held a very small debate down in South County, pretty much familiar Republican faces. But the potential gubernatorial candidate for Republicans, Rory Smith, if you can still remember it back that far, gave some impromptu remarks, and I videotaped him and put him on YouTube, and Dan York on W Hero grabbed those and made news of his remarks. Well, the very next RI Voter Coalition meeting, there were more candidates, more prominent candidates, and a lot more mainstream media. Now, I don't know if we can really claim to have had that effect, but it certainly didn't hurt that there was news being made that everybody else suddenly discovered that they had missed, and some little dinky website had picked it up. So Anchor Rising can't claim to be the driving force here, but we're participants in events that others set up, and we're able to bring attention to issues and events in a way that's somewhat different than rallies do, or research papers, or press releases. Our first priority is presenting and debating ideas, and people throughout the Rhode Island media, left and there is no right, but left and middle, they accept Anchor Rising as sort of activistic, but only incidentally, as a function of our conclusions. We're basically there to make the case for a general way of thinking rather than like a slate of issues, which makes a difference in the way that people listen to what we present. And our 5 or 6, trying to raise money, I've sat back and tried to think of our biggest accomplishments, and there are 5 or 6 that I would think are pretty substantial. Those could be every month, every week, if we could follow a prescription of a coalition that helped people to do this sort of thing and not have to worry about putting food on the table. So basically, we're trying to collect pledges of funding for 2011 so that we can build up awareness until the 2012 election, so that a small but significant effect that we've had can perhaps tumble into a landslide of political change. The person with whom I spoke last week likened Rhode Island to Detroit. His insinuation was that it's time to retreat and fight other battles because our eye is finished. I'd ask though, did Detroit stay in Detroit? I mean, are Greece's problems staying in Greece and Ireland? And will Rhode Island's deterioration stop at the borders of New England? I don't think so. These infections spread. And when you have a malignant disease, you don't just try to make the other organs as healthy as you can. You heal the infected ones. You rip out the illness. You help the body realize that it has to target the illness as a foreign and deadly substance, or ideology in this case. And it falls to us to attack this disease where it's settled in, because we're still here and hopefully staying. You don't quit, you don't leave, especially when you have everything you need to win. And we have everything we need. We've got people, we've got organizations falling into place along the tug of war, like the Tea Party, Anchor Rising, and Osprey. We've got, most importantly, truth and simple facts of reality and human nature on our side. But it's going to take more than a hobbyist's investment and to capitalize on these assets. It appears to me that our state is about to be governed by a regime that's probably going to teach Obama and the congressional Democrats a thing or two about how really to make a bad situation worse. I don't know what another way to put it is they're going to show them how to turn a scam into a mugging. We in this room can fight that effectively. We just have to make the case again and again that we're right, because we are. And we need to funnel that message in a way that can reach our fellow Rhode Islanders who don't know that they need to wake up, but really do.